Our next question for the president comes from Clearwater, Florida. Here it is.
Thank you for taking our question, Mr. President. I'm Mary Rose.
And I'm Mark, and we own Rosemark Grips. We're a small business in Florida that makes golf putter grips. We do not qualify for the payroll protection program because we do all the work ourselves. We don't have any payroll employees. We're wondering if there's something in the works that will help us out, as we have numerous bills that still need to be paid and do not qualify for current programs that are out there.
Well, first of all, I love your business, and I can speak for Bret. We could both use a nice putter grip, and it would be nice. But I don't know about you, Bret. I haven't played golf in a long time.
Played much.
We haven't played too much lately. But I will say this: what we have to do is get it open. I see New Jersey's opening up their golf courses. Florida's now opening up their golf courses. Parks are opening. Beaches are opening. At some point, we have to open our country, and people are going to be safe. We've learned a lot. We've learned about the tremendous contagion. But we have no choice. We can't stay closed as a country. We're not going to have a country left.
But Mark and Mary Rose are saying they fell through the cracks. We got a lot of questions like this, that either the bank didn't give it to them or they didn't qualify. And what do you tell them?
I understand. And all we can do in that case is we have to bring back the business. Now, all of that's opening, and their business is golf, which is a nice business. And we're opening up that whole golf sector, the sports sector, where I wish I could help them. I'd even help them personally, because you know what? It's not a big business, but for them, it's a big thing, and they probably do a fantastic job. I could see they have such great spirit. What we do is we loan the money to small businesses, but not necessarily business. It's an unusual circumstance where they're each their own employee. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at that. Maybe there is something we can do.
Because all the stimulus in the world really can't solve the problem of demand in the country, right? How do you stimulate demand?
The greatest thing we could do is get rid of the virus, because then everything comes back together. You don't need stimulus once that's happening. And what is happening is the stimulus. We're talking about $3 trillion, not just $2 trillion, $3 trillion. It could even go to $6 trillion. And we're going to have a tremendous year next year because of what we're doing and laying the seeds. We're talking 30 million jobs that we've saved. 30 million jobs, that's unheard of. In addition, we saved the airlines, we saved others. One thing happened on Friday that was very big. Boeing, a great company, then they had the problem that people know, a different problem, and then they end up with this, where their sales are cut so badly because of this, which is, by the way, also happening in Europe, as you know, with their competitor. No airplanes. They floated a bond issue, borrowed money, very, very successfully at a good rate on Friday. That's a big step. The markets are there. The markets are open. I believe it was $30 billion. So the markets are there. That's a big step. We didn't have to do anything with Boeing. They went out to the markets, and they were able to borrow a lot of money, and it's going to be a great company again. But we've done that with the airlines. The airlines, Bret, were having the best year they've ever had, ever in their history. And then we had to turn off the airlines. We had to turn off everything. And we did the right thing, but we never want to have to do it again.
Let's go to Carolyn Perkins. She's a retired nurse and an elementary school guidance counselor. And here's her question.
Okay.
President Trump, my husband and I thank you, your family, and your staff for your great dedication to our country. We pray for you every day. The question I have is about your manner of presentation. Why do you use descriptive words that could be classified as bullying, and why do you not directly answer the questions asked by the press, but instead speak of past successes and generally ramble? The USA needs you. Please let go of those behaviors that are turning people away from you. Please hold on to your wonderful attributes that make you our great leader, and let go of other characteristics that do not serve you.
Good. I think I like that question. I'm not sure, but I think I like that question. I appreciate it. I appreciate the prayers, too, very much. Look, I am greeted with a hostile press, the likes of which no president has ever seen. The closest would be that gentleman right up there. They always said Lincoln. Nobody got treated worse than Lincoln. I believe I am treated worse. You're there. You see those press conferences. They come at me with questions that are disgraceful, to be honest, disgraceful. Their manner of presentation and their words. And I feel that if I was kind to them, I'd be walked off the stage. I mean, they come at you with the most horrible, horrendous, biased questions. And you see it, 94 or 95% of the press is hostile. And yet, if you look in Florida today, we had hundreds and hundreds of boats going up and down the intercoastal, Trump. We have tremendous support, but the media they might as well be in the Democrat Party. And why, I don't know. We fixed our military, we fixed the vet. You know, if you look at the VA, you take a look at what's going on with our vets. They have choice now, and we have accountability. We're able to get rid of people that don't treat our vets well. They've been trying to do that for 44 years. And because of civil service and the unions, you couldn't do it. The biggest thing is choice. We've done choice where if a vet can't see a doctor quickly, they go outside, they get a doctor, they get fixed up, we pay the bill instead of waiting for 5 weeks, 7 weeks. Look at how well these things are running. We rebuilt our military. We had the greatest tax cut, biggest tax cut in history. All of the things we've done. And yet we have a very hostile press. And you understand, maybe you're not going to say it or admit it, and maybe you shouldn't, but nobody's ever seen anything like this. So I really appreciate the question, and I very much appreciate the sentiment behind the question. But I'm standing up there, and instead of asking me a normal question, the level of anger and hatred, I'll look at him, I'll say, what's your problem? What is your problem? You know, I believe we've done more than any president in the history of our country in the first 3 years, 3.5 years. I really believe that. When you look, even if you look, Space Force. Also, take a look at terrorism. Al-Baghdadi, we killed him. Soleimani, we killed him. We killed the worst terrorists in the world. We got rid of ISIS we took over 100% of the caliphate. When I took it over, the caliphate was all over the place.
But
Obama
do you think the election will come down to a referendum on how you handled this crisis?
No, but
you think it'll be bigger than that?
No. I think the election's going to come down to, I hope it does, because we've done a great job. We had no ventilators. We had no testing. We had nothing. I inherited empty, no ammunition. Our military was bad. We've rebuilt our military. $1.5 trillion. We have the best military by far in the world. It's rebuilt. It's either all new or the equipment's coming in, which is great. But you know what? Also medically, we had empty cupboards. The cupboards were empty. We have an incredible testing. We have the best testing system right now in the world. We also make all the ventilators. I spent the weekend at Camp David speaking to, and a prior couple of days, speaking to heads of other countries that are desperate for ventilators. And we now have so many ventilators. You know, a month ago, that's all they were talking about was ventilators. The team of people that did this job was incredible. It was probably the biggest mobilization since World War II.
Mr. President, the governors credit you for the ventilators across the board. You mentioned the Democrats and leaving the cupboards bare from the previous administration. You're not surprised to hear that the former Vice President Joe Biden pushes back against that. He tweeted just the other day, we left a playbook. He ignored it. We created an office to prepare for pandemics. He gutted it. We had CDC officials in China to detect and contain the outbreaks. He pulled them out. Trump can try and shift blame all he wants, but the fact is his actions left us unprepared.
First of all, Joe Biden didn't write that. That was written from a young man that got very good grades at a very good school. That was not written by him. I promise you that. Joe Biden, just so you know, when I closed our borders to China, I did the China ban. I didn't want to do that. I did something that nobody wanted to do. Joe Biden said he's xenophobic. He's a racist. They called me a racist. And I saved hundreds of thousands of lives. And he actually apologized with a letter on a Friday night saying he made the right move. It wasn't well played by the press, but he said, I made the right move. No, if we would have listened to Joe Biden, look how badly they did on swine flu, the H1N1, which he calls the opposite. It's H1N1, swine flu. Look how badly they did on that. Look how badly they've done on so many other things. I mean, the place, our military was a mess. Just about everything was a mess. Look at what they did in the Middle East, what's gone on in the Middle East. And in all fairness on the Middle East, I look at the previous administration for getting us in, because that was the single worst decision made in this country's history. The single worst, getting into the Middle East. Just so you understand, we've spent $8 trillion in the Middle East. What do we have for it? What do we have for it? And things are moving very nicely in the other direction.
Our next question for the president comes from Rob in Ohio.
Hello, I'm Rob from Columbus, Ohio. The coronavirus is disproportionately affecting communities of color. I wanted to know what your administration will do to address this.
So we are working on that very hard, and you're right, 100% that if you look at African American, by the way, Asian American also, and Hispanic American, they're very much more affected. People are not 100% sure. It could be because it's a certain segment that does work together, restaurants and different jobs, which are affected a lot. But we're coming out with a report in 2 weeks on it, and I want to get to the bottom of it, too, because it's a totally disproportional effect. It really is. It's pretty amazing, actually.
Next question is from Trip Grebe. He is a freshman at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and here's his question for you.
Mr. President, if you're elected to a second term, what's your plan to be more fiscally responsible to either reduce or eliminate the deficit in response to increased federal spending for the coronavirus stimulus packages?
So we have billions of dollars coming in right now from other countries. We have money coming in. People are paying now for military protection. People are paying for other things. As you know, I'm putting taxes on other countries where they've taken advantage of us, especially, by the way, China. China never gave 10 cents to our country. They ripped off our country for many, and I've told this to President Xi directly, in a nice manner and in a not so nice manner. I get along with him. Should have done something different on this. But we made an incredible trade deal. We have tens of billions of dollars pouring in. President Obama and Joe Biden didn't do anything. China just had a field day with our country. And then you look at his son walking out with $1.5 billion. Give me a break on that. And I can go back to President Bush, and I can go back before President Bush, too. China ripped this country off for many, many decades, and I stopped it. Then, of course, you had this horror show coming in, the plague. It came in. So now it's a different story. But we've taken in billions, and what have I done with it? I've given some of the monies, because they were targeted by China, to the farmers and to the ranchers. $12 billion 2 years ago, $16 billion last year, and we have a lot this year. And we, by the way, have many times those numbers left over from all the money we're making from China. That never happened before.
You have $25 trillion in debt as of today, and
right.
there's more on the burner that's possibly coming down the pipe. What's the number that's too much when you get
We're going to cut back very substantially, plus we're going to have great growth. This country is going to grow like crazy as soon as we get it going, and we're going to start making our products here. Hey, Bret, you've known me for a long time. I've been talking about this for a long time. It's one of the reasons, I would say, border security, the military, and trade. These are the three primary reasons I got elected. This is a very big thing for me. I made a deal. Japan is now paying us $40 billion. They weren't paying us. They weren't doing anything. They were selling us cars. We wouldn't do anything to tax them, but we couldn't sell cars in Japan. Japan, we did a deal for $40 billion a year. Look at South Korea. We redid the deal in South Korea. Mexico, Canada, USMCA. The NAFTA deal was so horrible. It was so horrible. But I said a word just now, NATO. My biggest fan in the whole world is the Secretary General of NATO, Stoltenberg. Great man, great gentleman. He said, nobody has ever done for NATO what I've done. We got $150 billion. The money that they're paying other countries, they weren't paying. We were paying for 100% of NATO. And now other countries are putting up. I went to them, I said, listen, you can either pay or we're not going to be. Why would we be protecting all of these countries, 28 countries total? Why would we be protecting? You're not even paying your bills. You're delinquent. Martha, they're putting up $150 billion a year, and it's going up to $400 billion. And no other president has ever done anything like that.
We have to take a break, but I just want to ask you quickly. There's a lot of people who say, why, you talk about making it here in America. Why are all of the antibiotics made in China? Can you give me a date by which we will be self-sufficient in antibiotics in this country? And what kind of incentive would you give manufacturers of pharmaceuticals to make sure that we are not dependent on China anymore for this?
So the reason it took place is because other people that sat in this chair, maybe not right here, but this is a beautiful place, because they were foolish. You could even say because they were stupid, because they allowed this to happen. And it's not only China. You take a look at Ireland, they make our drugs. Everybody makes our drugs except us. And we've already done it. We're coming out with things, numbers. You're seeing numbers of innovations that we've made in the past, and things are being announced already. But we're bringing that whole supply chain back. Nobody has to tell me to do it. I've been talking about that for years. Now, the one that you see You don't see it. You see it with cars. You see it with other things. People never looked at medicine. But it's always been about medicine because we have at least 94, 95% of our medicines are made.
It's important to do the vaccine here.
Well, it's an incredible thing. They're American companies. Well, I'd like to be able to do it here. I don't want to do it in China. That I can tell you. But I think we're going to do it here. And if we do it someplace else, look, we have to get a vaccine. Whoever gets it, I'm gonna be their best fan, and I need the vaccine. This country needs the vaccine. And you're going to have it by the end of the year. I firmly believe it.
When will we get that 94% of antibiotics made in this country? Do you have a target date for that?
I think we will have it done within 2 years. You know, it doesn't go that quickly. And frankly, you put me in a very bad negotiating position by asking me this question. You know, we're talking about this. Now I'm supposed to call up my guys. I mean, you put me in a very bad negotiating position. And I'm not blaming you. That's your job. But, you know, you're taking my cards away because I don't want to be talking this way. I've done a lot. But it gets exposed when you answer. I assume the show is a big show, right? It's going to do very well tonight. But you do take away a lot of my cards when you're asking me a question like that. You understand that?
Yes.
Here's the bottom line. I met with the drug company 6 months ago. I said, you're going to start making the drugs here. You're going to start making them here. And they do it for two reasons. A cost reason, but it's no longer so much cost because we can do things here for the same price and in some cases less, and then you don't have the transportation problems. We're taking care of our, look, another reason I got elected, and some people don't like the sound of it, and other countries don't like it, but I said, I'm sorry. It's called America First, and we're all about America First. That's what we're about.
Let's get back to our questions. Gentlemen, thank you for being here, Mr. Secretary.
Mr. Vice Good to see you.
Boy, what a beautiful shot as night falls over the Lincoln Memorial here in Washington, D.C. Welcome to all of you. Great to have you here. Let's go to our next questioner, Kylie Patterson from Baltimore. She is the Director of Economic Inclusion at Johns Hopkins University.
President Trump, in the face of the COVID-19 pandemic, millions of Americans have lost their jobs. How will you respond to the joblessness while also ensuring that our infrastructure is better than ever? Have you considered investing in infrastructure in our highways, our railways, our airports, and bridges as a way to create jobs for America?
Yeah.
Mr. President, that's to you, but you can obviously phone a friend here if you'd like to.
And I'd love to have both speak about it, but infrastructure is very important. It's also important to the Democrats, by the way. That's something we actually do get along. I want to see a payroll tax cut on both sides, a very strong one, because that's going to really put people to work. But infrastructure is so important. Our country, our roads are, they're going to hell. We can't get infrastructure approved. Now we have a period of time when we can get infrastructure done by both parties, and we're looking at that. In addition, as you know, they want bailouts for the states, the Democrats, and really it's a number of states that frankly have not been managed well by Democrats over a long period of time. So we have to be very careful about that. Very careful. But we will be doing infrastructure. And I told Steve just today, we're not doing anything unless we get a payroll tax cut. That is so important to the success of our country and to the following year, because I think that the following year has a chance to be one of our best years. That'll be tremendous. Do you all
believe that that is how you stimulate demand, is that payroll tax cut? I mean, where do you look at that in the big picture?
Well, the president's been very clear on that, and he's spoken about a payroll tax cut over the years. But I would also say to that viewer that, that the immediate way we deal with joblessness is by opening up America again. The guidelines that the president produced, that now we see some 41 states produced plans for a phased, responsible reopening of our economy, is going to create jobs in the immediate. And I just think where we are today, despite the heartbreaking losses of more than 67,000 Americans, where we are today is still a tribute to our healthcare workers, to the sacrifices that American families and businesses have made over the last few months. And if we continue to practice that social distancing, those mitigation efforts as we go through a phased reopening, we'll create jobs today. And with the president's vision for infrastructure, a payroll tax cut, I have no doubt that the second half of this year, we're going to see an American comeback. And next year, I agree with the president. I think we're going to have one of the best years in the history of our economy.
Mr. Secretary, we had questions earlier about people feeling like they fell through the cracks, wondering, how they're going to factor in if they didn't get the PPP loan. What are you looking at for the next thing?
Well, let me just first comment before we say the next thing. Let me just emphasize what we've done. And the president was very clear, keeping Americans at work, putting them back to work, protecting American business was our #1 priority in an unprecedented way. We now have $3 trillion that we're putting into the economy. That's just beginning. So for those Americans who haven't received their money yet, they will over the next few weeks. Last week alone, we did 2.1 million of small business loans, averaging $85,000 or less. We've already sent an enormous number, over 120 million direct deposits and checks. The president created enhanced unemployment. So the president has been very clear in an unprecedented way for us to support the economy. And in the next round, we will go back and work with Congress, just as we have before, to make sure we protect American business, American workers, and to stimulate the economy going forward.
So let's go to our next question for you all from Phil Tuckoff. He's the president of Tuckoff Food Products, which is a family company, been in the business for over 90 years. They have 4 locations, South Carolina, Georgia, Oregon, and Tennessee. And here is Phil's question.
For my firm, the current tariffs add up to almost $60,000 in monthly additional costs for my operations. Lifting these tariffs would help us speed the recovery for many of us by allowing those funds to be used to hire workers, invest in equipment, and recoup some of the cash we've spent to weather the current economic situation. Would you consider permanently or even temporarily reducing or eliminating those tariffs?
So, Phil, we're looking at different things, but you have to remember, I've taken those tariffs and given a lot of them to the farmers, and farmers that would have been really forced out of business by China when they were targeted, because China never had to target us, because China was ripping our country off. We were losing $500 billion a year to China for years, and $300 billion, $200 billion, $544 billion, $544 billion a few years ago. And what I'm doing is, and what I've done is taken a lot of money out of China, and I've given it back to Phil and other people, because I've given it back to not all of it, because we had so much money came in from China. But we gave, as I said, $12 billion 2 years ago, $16 billion, and this year we have $19 billion that we're distributing to the farmers. Nobody's ever done that. No president's ever done that.
But Phil is obviously bringing in supplies from China that he's paying tariffs on. Would you encourage him to try to find other countries to buy those things from?
He is, but you know what they're also getting? They're getting big payments. The farmers are getting big payments. And by the way, they are the most incredible people. They don't even want the payments. You know what they say to me? Something that almost no other group, and I can say practically no other group, they want a level playing field. We had a meeting with them, with Mike, and they came in and I said, we're going to give you this. They said, sir, honestly, we don't want anything. We just want a level playing field. Because for 18 years, really, it's longer than that, they've been taken advantage of, not only by China, by everybody, including Canada, including many, many countries that you wouldn't even think. So the farmers now, with the new USMCA and all of the other things, and as far as Phil, I understand it, but we're giving billions and billions of that money to the farmers, and have a lot of money that goes back into the Treasury, and Steve is the proud recipient from the standpoint of the Treasury.
But are you considering new tariffs on China as sort of a punishment for their handling of the virus?
Well, it's the ultimate punishment. I will tell you that. I don't.
You had experts look at.
I don't like to tell you what because we're all playing a very complicated game of chess or poker. Name whatever you want to name, but it's not checkers. That I can tell you. We have a very complicated game going. Our country was being ripped off by every nation in the world, and now we have made unbelievable strides. Unfortunately, then we get hit by this whole situation. But we have done so well. We have taken in so much money. Going before the virus, China had the worst year they had in 67 years. That's a reason. And I'm not happy about that, but what it does is it says they were taking us for a ride.
Right, but to Phil's point is that Americans
has ever done at any time.
He's saying Americans feel it. Experts said just your mention of that helped drive the markets down Thursday and Friday. But I'm just wondering if you're really seriously thinking about it.
Tariffs at a minimum are the greatest negotiating tool that we have ever devised that were never used for negotiation. President Xi only made the deal with us. They're going to buy $250 billion. Now, we're going to have to see what's going on because of what happened. This was done, months before the virus. But we're going to buy $250 billion worth of our product. $250 billion. They didn't buy 2 cents. They didn't want to buy from us. They took advantage of our country. Now they have to buy. And if they don't buy, we'll terminate the deal. Very simple. But by using the tariffs, that's the only reason. The one thing that he said, we must get rid of tariffs. I said, we're not going to get rid of tariffs. You got to treat our country with respect. You've been ripping off our country for many years. The World Trade Organization has ripped off this country. That's when China became an economic power. And by the way, you have World Trade and you have World Health. The World Health Organization has been a disaster. Everything they said was wrong, and they're China-centric. All they do is they agree with China, whatever China wants to do. So our country, perhaps foolishly in retrospect, has been paying $450 million a year to the World Health Organization. And China has been paying $38 million a year. But they were more political than all of our leaders previous. So we'll see what I do with that. I'm going to have to make a decision on that. But we're not happy because what they did, what World Health did, they missed every single call.
There's a question to that.
Put up with it.
Yeah. Let's go to Moise. Can we pull up Moise right now?
He's from Crawford, I think. Yep.
Mr. President, I have a question for you. Is there enough evidence that China misled global community about this coronavirus? If it's so, how should global community respond?
Well, I don't think there's any question about it. We wanted to go in. They didn't want us to go in early, very early. You'll see that because things are coming out that are pretty compelling now. So I don't think there's any question. Don't forget, China tried to blame it first on some of our soldiers. That turned out to not go too far. And I really got very upset with that. That was not right. And then they tried to blame it on Europe. I said, how did Europe get involved all of a sudden? Italy suffered probably more than anybody per capita, but Italy, Spain, France now is on an additional lockdown. They've got tremendous problems. All of Europe, it's been a disaster. And, when I put a ban on, those people went, for the most part, not here. And I'm not happy about this. It's terrible because it's life, whether it's here or Europe. But we put a ban on very early on China coming in. They went to Europe. Most of those people went to Europe. That's why Italy was so badly affected. And you just see what they're going through. China tried to blame Europe for this. No,
you told John Roberts the other day
China.
that you saw evidence that gave you a high confidence that the virus came from the Wuhan lab.
We're going to be
Not that it was created there, perhaps, but that it came from there.
At the right time, we're going to
illuminate any more about that?
Yeah, we're going to be given a very strong report as to exactly what we think happened. And I think it'll be very conclusive.
Is there any suggestion that it was anything nefarious or that it was just a mistake?
So I think they made, personally, I think they made a horrible mistake, and they didn't want to admit it. We wanted to go in. They didn't want us there. Even World Health wanted to go in. They were admitted, but much later, not immediately. And my opinion is they made a mistake. They tried to cover it. They tried to put it out. It's like a fire. It's really like trying to put out a fire. They couldn't put out the fire. What they really treated the world badly on, they stopped people going into China, but they didn't stop people going into the USA and all over the world. So you could fly out of Wuhan, where the primary problem was, all of the problem, essentially, also where the lab is. But you could fly out of Wuhan, and you could go to different parts of the world, but you couldn't go to Beijing, and you couldn't go to any place in China. So what's that all about? In other words, they knew they had a problem. I think they were embarrassed by the problem, very embarrassed. And, the case could be made. They said, hey, look, this is going to have a huge impact on China, and we might as well let the rest of the world, because the last people they want, we've had a great year against China prior to the virus coming. And I told you, 67 or so years, the worst economy they've had. Worst they've almost on record that they've ever had because of my negotiations and because I taxed them on the product that they brought in. And by the way, they paid for that tax. It wasn't our people. They paid for that tax. They devalued their currency. But here's the thing. They allowed this to go into our country. They allowed it to go into other countries.
Does it change how you feel about President Xi? Does it change your relationship with him?
Look, I finished a trade deal that everybody said would be impossible to get. And not only a trade deal, it was a great deal for this country. But that was done months before the virus came. I'm not going to say anything. I had a very good relationship. He's a strong man. He's a tough man. But I had a very good relationship with him. But this should never have happened. This should never have happened. This virus should not have spread all over the world. They should have put it out. They should have let us and other people in other countries go in and put it out, because people knew it was happening.
We have another question about the situation getting people back to work in the U.S. Air travel, 95% down from a year ago, according to the TSA. Our next question coming from an aircraft technician in Texas.
Hi, I'm Joe from Arlington, Texas. I work for a major airline. How can we ensure the health safety of our passengers? And Mr. President, what advice would you give future presidents to prevent this from happening to our country again?
I love that second question. I just love it. But your airline was probably saved by us because Steve and all of the people we have, we chose the smartest people on Wall Street to help us. Who else is better than these people? That's what they do. And by the way, they're working for a very tiny fee, because I said, I don't want to pay them a lot of money for doing this. We're giving them money to save the airlines. I'm not looking to make them rich. They're rich enough. So I said, we're going to get the best people, pay them some cost, but pay them very little. I hope you kept doing that, Steve, right?
I did, Mr. President.
I hope. I'm going to check you. Anyway, but we have the smartest people. We saved the airlines. We saved the airlines with 50, 25, and $25 billion. So it's $50 billion, which is a very small price to pay that we're having the best year ever. As far as your question of the future, we have to bring our product back home. We have to make our product in this country. We can't be hostage, because that's what we are. We can't be hostage to other countries, China in particular, but also to other countries. We can't ever let that happen again.
Mr. Vice President, there is that balance. People are afraid to get on a plane if they can eventually, and balancing that fear of getting people back to work or dealing with that fear.
Well, the president brought the airlines in very early on, and we want to commend all of our great airlines for continuing to operate where people needed to do essential travel. But to your point, Bret, 95% reduction in the number of passengers. And it's one of the reasons why we're providing financial assistance to those airlines. And I just say to that hardworking American that we're going to bring it back. And the best thing we can do for airlines, the best thing we can do for all of American businesses is, as the president often says, is put the coronavirus in the past. And the good news is that we're doing that. We're watching the trends literally every day, county by county, all across the country. In the hot spots, we're seeing stabilization and declines. Hospitalizations are going down. We've even seen over the last 5 days, the death rate has gone down. And again, one life lost is too many. I just had a friend who lost her mom in Kentucky, and she grieved that she couldn't be there to hold her hand when she went home to be with the Lord. But the fact that we are seeing declines, again, it's a tribute to the American people. And on the president's behalf and our whole team's behalf, I just want to urge the American people, as we continue to take important steps toward reopening our economy, getting people able to travel and enjoy the great benefits of this country and do business around America, we're going to do it in the way the president described, in that phased approach where we take careful measures to do it in a safe and responsible way. But I'm absolutely convinced that by early summer we could have this economy beginning to move again, and with all the tremendous advances we're making in medicine and what we've learned in this healthcare, we'll get this economy roaring and bring America all the way back.
I want to get to the next viewer, but I also want to ask you, Secretary, a quick question. Some of these states that have unfunded pension debt, right? We're throwing trillions of dollars at this effort to renew the country, renew the economy. Should they get money if they have not taken good care of their finances before this happened?
We're not looking to bail out states that were poorly managed. What we did do in the CARES Act, there was $150 billion that was allocated to the states for coronavirus expenses. One of the things the president just instructed me to do, and we sent out guidance on Friday, that states can use the money for policemen, firemen, first responders without limits, so we can make sure that none of those people who have been fighting the front lines in any way are impacted by the states having lower revenues. But the president's very clear. We're looking to help states, but we're not bailing out states' finances.
Carlia Alderman from Merritt Island, Florida, wants to know this. Take a listen.
Hi, Mr. President. My husband and I both work at our local church, and I think a lot of us churchgoers are just wondering when we might be able to get back to an in-person church service. Do you have any idea when this might be?
I hope it's going to be very soon, because I'm seeing things that I don't like seeing. I see some churches, they are literally staying in their car with the window closed. I guess it comes out through the radio, the service. And they were getting arrested. And they're sitting in a car, and the cars are even far away, and they say, close your windows, so it has to come in electronically. And I'm saying, why can't they do that? Or they'll go in a field, some field, and they'll have a good minister, pastor, it could be a rabbi, it could be a person of faith. And what happens is, in some places, not in all places, I would say in most places they really sympathize, but I do. And I've been listening to services over the last 4 or 5 weeks, some very, very good people, and everybody knows who I've been listening to, and we go different person. Last week it was Cardinal Dolan at St. Patrick's Cathedral, which a place I'm very familiar with, but we've had pastors and ministers. I will say this, it's wonderful to watch people over a laptop, but it's not like being at a church. And we have to get our people back to churches, and we're going to start doing it soon.
The Attorney General sent a memo directing U.S. attorneys to be on the lookout for health restrictions that could interfere with constitutional rights. There are a lot of people who cheered that because, you know, they do want to go back to church, and as you're talking about. But there are others who fear he might be encouraging people to do things that might be unsafe at the time when some states are going up.
Yeah, no, he's not doing, well, there's not too many states that I know of that are going up. Almost everybody is headed in the right direction. I was with a man who got hit very, very hard in many ways over the last little while, Phil Murphy from New Jersey. People don't realize that's the single most dense state, and who would think that? But New Jersey is very dense, the Manhattan overflow, the New York overflow. And those numbers are now even coming, because a very, I mean, not his fault. He's doing a really good job as governor. I'll say it. He's a Democrat, and I'll say it. And he's been through a lot, even himself physically. You know, he just went through a very big problem, as people know. I think he's done a really good job. And even those numbers are coming down. New Jersey was really hit hard. No, I think most of the numbers are coming down. We're on the right side of it, but we want to keep it that way. But we also want to get back to work. The people want to get back to work. You know, I've seen it more and more. People are saying that also causes death. It causes drug addiction. It causes suicides. It's a lot of death caused by that. There's no win here, just so we all understand. There is no win. This is not a situation where there's a win. But the job that this country has done, the people of this country, it's incredible how they've endured, how they've suffered. That's why we are, in terms of deaths, it's a tremendous number. One is too many, right? I've said it all the time. Yeah. But in terms of death, Bret, we're at the lower level, the lowest level predicted, and we might not even hit that. It may be lower than that. And sadly, that's all we can do.
And we're going to do a lightning round of questions, some short answers and some short questions as well. But I want to start with you, President Trump. We're 6 months away from the election today. A different world than when we were all together in Scranton. Right. What kind of GDP, what kind of employment number do you think you're going to need to get the support of the American people in November?
Our country was sailing. I would tell people, I would say, you know, can this continue? We were doing the greatest ever, greatest economy in history of any country, blowing away everybody, including China. And then we had to close it. And my ambition is very quickly to get us back to where we were. And I think we can do that very, very quickly. Not if a Democrat comes in and raises taxes. They want to raise everybody's taxes. We're doing the opposite. And the payroll tax cut is very important for getting people back to work. What I want to do is, number one, we're getting rid of the virus. We have to do it. We're working with the governors. We're getting rid of the virus. But we got to put our country back to work. All those people out there that are protesting, they're right. They want to go back to work. We want to go back to work quickly but safely. And that's what's happening. And then next year, I think we're going to have a great economic year. We're going to get our jobs back. And I'll go a step further. We have a transition third quarter. We're going to have a very good fourth quarter. We're going to have a great next year.
So we're 6 months to the day. When is the next Trump rally? And will you wear a mask?
Well, I don't know. I mean, everybody wants the rallies. The rallies, we never had an empty seat. From the time I came down the escalator with a person that became our great first lady, who people really love, and they love her at those rallies too. And she loves the people of this country. We have to. They're longing for the rallies. I get it all the time.
Mask or no mask?
But you can't have a rally. I don't think we can have a rally with an empty stadium, with nobody in there. In other words, you know, you may be able to pull it off for baseball or football or boxing or basketball. You can't pull off a rally with 100%. It wouldn't work out too well. So hopefully we'll be able to do rallies in the last couple of months. I mean, I would hope that within maybe the last couple of months, we'll be able to do rallies in various states.
Mr. Vice President, you went to the Mayo Clinic. You didn't wear a mask. Your critics jumped on you for that. Then you went to GM. You did wear a mask. Was that a concession to the critics, or are you sending mixed signals there?
Well, from early on, the CDC's made it clear that you wear a mask to prevent you from conveying the coronavirus to other people. And since the president and I are in the unique positions we're in, we're tested often.
We should point out that we're tested as well. That's why we're here without a mask as well.
I didn't think it was necessary, but I should have worn the mask at the Mayo Clinic. And I wore it when I visited the ventilator plant in Indiana. And I think it really is a statement about the American people, the way people have been willing to step forward, practice social distancing, wear masks in settings where they can't do that. And I just have to tell you that I couldn't be more grateful to see the way the American people responded. First, the president called for 15 days to slow the spread, then 30 days to slow the spread. And this was a great hardship on families and on businesses large and small, but the American people did it. It's made an immense difference. I believe it's saved thousands of lives. And as we go forward, as we continue to practice those principles, all of us together, I know we'll get through this.
So you were asked to speak at the West Point graduation. There's been some pushback on that. Tammy Duckworth, a veteran, said it would be reckless.
A Democrat.
So are you going to do it? And do you think that it's worth the risk for those families and cadets?
There's no risk. Are you ready? They wanted me to speak. I didn't want to speak. I love West Point. I grew up near my school, where I went to high school was right near West Point, New York Military Academy. So it was a mini West Point, very mini. But West Point's this incredible thing, incredible place. I love it. I know it well because, I spent a lot of time at West Point. They wanted me to come and speak. Then they changed the date. I believe it's June 13th. And it's my honor to speak. But I didn't want to necessarily do it. What they're doing is they're coming back a little bit early. They're going to be fully tested. They're going to be very, very spread apart. I said, I want their families to be there. Mike made the commencement address. I did it last year at the Air Force Academy. Mike did it this year. There were no parents in a big stadium, and they were very spread apart, and it was fine. But they asked me to do it, and I agreed. The generals asked me, would I please do it? I'm the president of the United States. They wanted to have it.
I'd love to have you there.
All wanted it.
Mr. President, last thing. What do you tell your kids and grandkids about COVID-19, about this time? What do you tell them?
I sat down with my son. I sat down with my grandchildren. I said, a terrible thing has happened. It's a thing that we've never experienced. I said, I guess you could go back over 100 years and you could go to 1917 and we experienced it, but Europe experienced it much worse. It could have been 100 million people died. But I said, something's happened, but we're going to be strong and we're going to get out of it. And our country is going to be bigger and better and stronger than ever before.
President Trump, Vice President Pence, Secretary Mnuchin, thank you very much for your time. It's a real honor to be here tonight.
Great to have you with us. Honor to have all of you here tonight.
Good to be with you.
And thank you.